And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Sports Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we are going to be talking about the playoff games that are going to, the divisional round games in particular, that are going to start on Saturday and Sunday. And we're going to do a quick preview of all of those games. So I want to start with the Eagles game first, because we do have some information regarding the Eagles and the conditions that they're going to have to play in. So apparently, on Sunday, heading into the divisional round, there's expected to be a huge snowstorm. Yes, there's expected to be a storm, and eventually all of the Eagles field that the players are going to be playing on is going to be covered in snow. And obviously, we love to watch these snow games, and I think that snow games are way more entertaining than regular games. Whenever there's snow on the field, obviously, it's a little bit more brutal for the players to play in snow, but it's much more fun for the fans observing. Not so much the fans observing like in the cold itself, but from their TV where it's nice and warm and things like that. So the Eagles actually, they similar to all of these playoff teams, the Eagles played the Rams before, and the last time that they played in a regular season game in Week 12, the Eagles ran for a season-high 314 yards, and Saquon ended up recording the most of those yards with a career-high 255 yards on the ground in a 37-20 win. Now, although Barkley was able to do whatever he wanted against the Rams, it's unlikely that he's going to be able to do that again in this game, and I'll give you a reason why. So, in NFL history, there have been 8 players to rush for 200 yards against a team in the regular season, and then go up and face that same team in the postseason. And Saquon is now the 8th one, so that means there were 7 before him. All of the 7 players that rushed for at least 200 yards against a team that they're going to play in the postseason were held under 100 yards in their playoff meeting. So they were able to do whatever they wanted in the regular season, but then they were unable to do what they wanted in the postseason. The defenses were able to adjust to whatever the running back was doing. So obviously, Saquon, through most of the time in his career, he's going to have to fight against the tide and try and become the first player to ever accomplish a feat such as this. And what would that even be called? The first player to ever run for 100 yards after running for 200 yards in the regular season. I don't know what they're going to call it, but again, he would be the first player to record over 100 yards against a team that he recorded 200 yards on in the regular season. So, I mean, that's something, considering how the last 7 players that were unable to do that. So, obviously, fighting against the tide and being the first of anything is a great achievement, especially when it comes to the NFL. Because when you're in the NBA and you become the first to do this or the first to do that, usually a lot of people can point that out to the fact that you shoot more threes, or the fact that maybe this player shot more threes, or maybe this guy's taller, this, that, and the other. When you do something first in the NFL, it's a really, really big deal. And Fettuccine's in the chat. He's saying the Rams are winning the Super Bowl, ? No, I don't think the Rams are going to win the Super Bowl. If any team was going to win the Super Bowl, it would be I think the first option would be the Chiefs, then it would be the Lions, and then if it's not the Chiefs or the Lions, then I think Baltimore has the best chances of winning in the Super Bowl. Now, the players that I mentioned, because I mentioned there were 7 players, but who were those 7 players? Well, one of them was James Brooks, he played for the Bengals in 1990. He rushed for 200 yards against the Oilers, but then only was able to record 17 when they met in the postseason. Barry Sanders for the Lions, 215 yards against the Bucks, only 59 yards in the postseason. Marshall Faulk for the Rams, 222 yards against the Saints, but only 24 of those, but he only got 24 against them in the postseason. Adrian Peterson, 210 yards against the Packers, only 99 yards against the Packers. So Adrian Peterson so far is the best one with 99 yards. Noshan Moreno ended up running for 224 yards against the Patriots in 2013, only rushed for 59 yards in that game. Jonas Gray for the Patriots rushed 201 yards against the Colts in 2014. He only got 4 yards against them in the postseason. And finally, Ajayi, forgive me if I messed up that last name, in 2016, 204 yards against the Steelers, but he only recorded 33 yards in their postseason meeting. So, again, not a lot of yards per game. That's 43 yards per game in the playoffs for a group of running backs that were all able to get over 200 against the same opponent. So, again, not a very clean situation to be in if you are Saquon, like fighting against the current like that. But that's usually what happens with NFL and their defenses. Whenever they see something that they're struggling with, they try to improve it for their next matchup, because that's sort of where coaching comes into play with the NFL, because it's like you have to come up with a game plan, because most likely the team that already beat you is going to try to use the same strategy to beat you. So it's going to come down to whether or not you can counter what they're doing and whether or not they have prepared enough counters for what you're doing. And that's sort of how the coaching battle in the NFL gets started, because it's not like you can, obviously mid-game you can try and do that, but it's a lot more difficult to try and get your players centered and focused into your new game plan while they're still in the middle of a game going on. It's not very easy to for teams to be able to adjust on the fly, which is why that there are a lot of instances where teams would much rather lose in the regular season as opposed to losing in the postseason, because if you lose in the regular season, then it gives you a chance to learn what you do wrong and how you can improve on that to go into the postseason. If you have a flawless record while you're going into the postseason, then you're not going to be nearly as sharp as you expect, because you're going to go into the postseason thinking, okay, we have literally nothing left to improve on because we're winning in these games, which is why there has not been a single team in NFL history that has gone flawless throughout the regular season and throughout the postseason. It's just never happened. And the one team that came close enough to doing that ended up losing at the very end. So, yeah, let's go Giants. It's the only thing that we got. But obviously, the Eagles and Rams game, that's not the only game going on. We obviously have the Texans going up against the Chiefs. That's going to be the first game that's happening on Saturday at 4:30, and I think it's easy to pick the Chiefs in this one. Lil Fettuccine's jumping the gun a little bit there. Ohio State or Notre Dame. I have since he already brought up the question, I have Ohio State winning in this game, and I just think that the roster is at this point in the tournament, the roster is just too good to fail, and I mean, knocking off Texas the way that they did, knocking off Oregon as well the way that they did, and now they have to move on to play Notre Dame. I think that Ohio State is going to win in this one. If they don't, then that's a really big problem for them and their program, but I really think that they're going to be able to win. I mean, they have a competent enough defense to be able to stop their run game. While Notre Dame's quarterback has been solid, I would much rather have Ohio State's quarterback at the helm as opposed to Notre Dame's quarterback. And not to mention, I would also rather have everything that Ohio State has, I would rather have than Notre Dame right now. I don't mean to make it sound disrespectful, but that's just how talented Ohio State really is. Now, I already said that the Chiefs are going to beat the Texans. The Commanders, they're going to go up against the Lions. This one is going to be a very good game, I think, because like every single one of the Commanders' games have been a close one. So I don't think that trend is going to change at all in this game. I do think that the Lions are going to come out on top, maybe by just a field goal, but they will come out on top. These are two teams that love to go for it on fourth down. And that's really going to be the exciting team. Which team can convert more of those fourth downs and which team can convert on the third downs, all that stuff. Now, the final game, which is also in contention for the most exciting one, is the Ravens going up against the Bills. Obviously, two MVP candidates in Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And they both have a very solid team. While the Bills, they on paper, they have the better record. I think the Ravens are a much better team. They also had to play in a much more difficult conference than the Bills had to play in, despite the fact that the Bills ended up losing to the Patriots at one point. But that's besides the point. I think the Ravens team, they definitely have more star power. You know, if Lamar can't get anything going, then they have Derrick Henry, who's a really good option on the ground and is usually faster than most secondaries in the league. So they also, similar to the Eagles destroying the Rams in the regular season, the Ravens destroyed the Bills in the regular season in that one matchup. So whether or not they're going to be able to beat them again, I mean, they really embarrassed Josh Allen in that game, which should be the clear-cut deciding factor on who the MVP should be, by the way, but that's also neither here nor there. But again, personally, I think that isn't it going to snow in the Buffalo game? I think it was I saw that it was going to snow in the Philly game, so again, I wouldn't really be that surprised if it decides to if it snows in Buffalo, because we know Buffalo gets a lot of snow over there. But if it snows in Philly, then again, would not be surprised if it's going to snow in Buffalo on that same day. But nothing that I heard of. But even if there was snow, I still don't think it would affect either one of those teams. I mean, it's not like it's Miami in the snow, because both of those, the Ravens and the Bills, they're sort of used to playing in the cold weather. Unlike, because we've seen several Miami Dolphins matchups against the Bills where the Dolphins, they seem to be like they're going to be the team that wins at the end of the day. But then when it snows, that's immediately when the Dolphins start to play worse. And it's very apparent when it does happen. But I'm not sure that's going to happen in this game. And if it did, it wouldn't have much effect. So that's all that I have in this third segment. So now we're going into the fourth segment where I talk about Miami most likely going to play in Madrid for next season. So, speaking of Miami, I know. I'll talk about that right after this short break. Be sure to stay tuned if you guys are interested.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.